The Evil Dead rise once more to terrorize the living and the innocent in the newest Evil Dead movie. Drowning in all the blood and bile is a Bruce Campbell cameo and proof that you and I are doomed to repeat history ad infinitum. Just remember to stop this recording now if you don't want its unholy spoilers to be set free.
Well, that sounds fine to me.
Evil Dead Rise opens with an extremely familiar scene. 3 young adults staying at a secluded cabin in the woods, where one by one each of them is killed or maimed by the evil forces that lurk amongst the trees. Don't get too comfortable watching though, this is just a rare dual pro-epilogue to the family-devouring story you have in store. The possession of Jessica is more than a cheeky movie tease. It is both a litmus test for you the audience and an homage to Evil Dead's long history. Within the first 10 minutes, you are given both the new rules of possession as well as a reintroduction to the gleeful goriness that made the franchise a household name to begin with. So if scalping and drone blades to the face aren't your speed, the film may not be for you. But beyond the bountiful blood spilling is the formula we all know and love. Caleb is no Ash, but he does share the poor decision making. Even Jessica reading Wuthering Heights without seeing the pages resembles Cheryl's card guessing in the first movie. Now, why Deadites use their telepathy for party tricks is beyond me, but back to the point. I hope you aren't eating, because there is nothing more unappetizing than a rotting undead corpse. Henrietta Noby haunted the nightmares of every 8-year-old who stole their dad's VHS collection. With her gray ripped skin, bloated blubbery body, and elongated stop-motion neck, she was far from the prettiest Deadites. If you don't know who I'm talking about, then you should just rewatch Evil Dead 2. Though you should watch it anyway, and pay attention to the Professor Raymond Noby tape recordings, whose wife was possessed and buried under the cabin before the events of the second film. All caught up? Good. Because that horrifyingly hideous creature inspired devilishly delicious pizza. Henrietta's Pizza might be the best pizza this side of the Atlantic, but why it evokes such sinister imagery is beyond me. Unfortunately, we don't get to leave the late professor's wife just yet. Her death wails will ring in our ears again further down the list. If you've somehow made it this far into the video without knowing who Bruce Campbell is and were waiting for some explanation, congratulations. He is a seasoned Sam Raimi regular.
Hail to the king, baby.
From Spider-Man to Doctor Strange, he's in everything. Their relationship started all the way back in 1975 when the two were still in high school. From there, Raimi started making Super 8 films, and who better to be in them than his good friend Campbell. This led to a short film called Within the Woods, which itself eventually birthed the first Evil Dead. From there, it's history. Got it? Good.
Basically.
But Evil Dead Rise is not a Raimi picture. He was a producer, sure, but the directing chops of Lee Cronin can be thanked for this friendly romp. Bruce Campbell's cameo is solely because he plays Ash. So where is the 6'1" silver screen powerhouse? It is admittedly hard to spot him in the claustrophobic setting because he isn't in it. He instead lent his voice to a scene that literally made my entire theater laugh. When Danny plays his groovy stolen record, you can hear the crowd shouting not to read the Necronomicon. And amongst the protests, there is one pretty good argument. Destroy it! It's called the Book of the Dead for a reason! This is the voice of none other than Bruce Campbell.
Groovy.
Though if you thought I'd say someone else, you haven't been paying much attention. Hey, I guess you could say Ellie is like Evil Dead 2, because she was dead by dawn. If the musical can make bad puns and win an award, so can I. Back to the point though, Ellie was dead wrong. Not only was everyone in fact dead by dawn, she even failed to kill a fetus, which, as far as demonic villains go, is kind of weak sauce, not gonna lie. Deadites have been threatening that since the 80s, and each time they are killed sooner rather than later. Where do these Deadites keep getting that idea from anyway? Well, all the way back to Evil Dead 2, in fact. None other than one Henrietta Noby chants it gleefully. Yes, for those in the comments, Ed said it first, but he's only a part demon. Dead by Dawn is almost synonymous with Evil Dead as a whole, and it would be blasphemous not to include it. Chainsaw aside, trust me, it's coming. The shotgun is probably the most recognizable weapon in the entire series, and even though it has changed its exact model over the decades, the most well-known has to be his Boomstick, a 12-gauge double-barrel Remington. This bad boy can be found in the sporting goods section of your local S-Mart location.
Shop smart. Shop S-Mart.
Just be prepared to drop $240.31 in today's money. Inflation, the monster of capitalism since 1838. Not to mislead you, of course, Ash's top-of-the-line S-Mart firearm is missing completely from this film. Instead, you'll see a subtle shout-out to the sensational shotgun, because the only gun in the entire film is a double-barrel shotgun. Sweet and simple. Before we move on though, I have some questions. Why did Ash know where the gun came from? Simple answer, he just so happens to sell a similar gun at his work. Not a big deal, sure. Yet that doesn't explain why shotguns work in the first place. Deadites seem to be immune to stabbing, burning, slashing, smashing, and cerebral damage, just to name some of what we see. The only thing that can add an asterisk to their invulnerability seems to be a sawed-off shotgun. It wouldn't be entirely accurate to call The Evil Dead a horror franchise. Granted, it is blood-curdling and chilling most of the time. Humor, however, plays a huge part in its foundation. Rise doesn't forget that either, showing true respect for one of comedy's greatest and most celebrated movies, The Shining. That's what I call the reverse bait and switch.
Yeah, it is.
Before Beth and Cassie can escape their Kandarian pursuer, the elevator fills with blood and the two are sent into the grossest free fall down an elevator shaft. After a moment, the elevator opens and a flood of blood comes spilling out. If you haven't seen The Shining somehow, go watch it. The Kubrick version, not the King version.
Well, that just happens to be exactly what I'm looking for.
This is simultaneously the most and least original movie in the Evil Dead series. The Mond building, which itself is just an anagram for demon, is new, but the story taking place inside has been and will be told countless times. This is the first movie to take place in the city, and even the Necronomicon is missing its familiar smiling face. However, it's more pop than jazz, relying on the comfortable rhythms and chords of its predecessors. Take Danny finding the Book of the Dead. A well-timed earthquake is new, but a basement holding a human skin-bound book with a recording of its translation is not. Then, a female lead leaves the main cast after someone starts to read the Necronomicon. An evil presence attacks her, restraining her by the arms and legs. Sure, this time it's wires, ropes, and not vines and roots, but the effect is the same. Last, and far worse than least, our old pal Henrietta rears her very ugly head again. Luckily, Ash blows it away soon after. When Ellie threatens to swallow Beth's soul, she's simply parroting the gruesome granny. Unfortunately for everyone involved, Ash wasn't there to blow that deadite away. Rise also remakes the greatest mouth catch since Austin Powers vs. Britney Spears, only it's a lot more gruesome than the one in Evil Dead 2. We even get to see what is left of Gabriel after his eye is forcefully bitten out of its socket. Now, the odds of Jake actually catching it in his mouth is math that would take me years to figure out, but the removal? That's easy. Now, the average human can exert just around 1.5 psi by blowing, far below the 12 psi needed to pop an eye out of its socket. Luckily, Ellie didn't care a lot about damaging the eye or its surroundings because she just bites it off. A feat that isn't even that impressive. The average person has at least 120 psi bite. That's 10 times the amount needed. So, at the end of the day, being taken over by a Kandarian demon seems to just turn you into a Floridian.
I thought it was kind of scary.
Jokes aside, don't try this at home. To the point here, Evil Dead is in love with lullabies. Horror as a genre is obsessed with children's songs and rhymes. Ellie, singing to trick Cassie into letting her in, holds a twisted mirror to the exact same scene in Evil Dead 2. I'll explain. In Dead by Dawn, Annie starts to believe her mother has been relieved of the evil inside when she starts to sing Hush Little Baby, only to be stopped from opening the basement latch by Ash. Meanwhile, in Rise, Cassie falls for it hook, line, and sinker. Without an S-Mart employee to guide her, she just starts to trust her ex-mom with only mild hesitation. Rise uses the audience's familiarity with the setup against them. We are primed to expect someone to stop Cassie from opening the door if we saw Evil Dead 2. So, when nobody does, the attack is even more thrilling. Now, if you watched Evil Dead 2 after this movie, you're waiting for Henrietta to burst through those chains like the worst Jack-in-the-Box imaginable. And when Ash stops Annie, it feels so satisfying. The two are now in conversation with each other. Beautiful. Bruce Campbell is not the only one who makes reappearances in Raimi productions. He is known to hide a 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88 in his works. The car makes its way into almost every Sam Raimi production imaginable. In fact, we even have an article about it on our website. If you're expecting me to tell you a long-winded tale about how it's hiding in some poster or in the parking garage somewhere, I have bad news. The car, like Campbell himself, is missing from the movie in the traditional sense. Cronin took a slightly askew take on the tradition. Everything Evil Dead related needs a chainsaw. It would feel empty without one. So, when he added his to the movie, Cronin hit two birds with one stone. So even though it's missing its ruby color, it gains a lovable and familiar honey mustard yellow. You're in luck, this story has a happy ending. The film was a fresh take on an old formula bound in the skin of all those who would come before. Be careful not to play any unknown tapes or records. Definitely don't read that creepy book you found in the fruit cellar either.
Yeah,